Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. And today we are going to be looking at the 2024 presidential election and if the Democratic Party runs their best possible candidate and in the same in the same odd scenario the Republican Party runs their worst candidate. So I did a part 1 of this video which I'm going to encourage you to watch now. Pause the video, of course. Uh, Pause this video, go check it out. It's the reverse. It's if the Democrats ran their worst candidate and the Republicans ran their best candidate in 2024. So go watch that if you have not seen it already. But if you have, feel free to keep watching this because that's what I want you to do. And we're just going to get started with this video. So first, the safe states for Sherrod Brown. He'd win Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, Colorado in this matchup. Safe. He'd also win Illinois, Virginia. Safe. The suburbs in Virginia are too far gone for the Republicans, especially with a candidate like Sherrod Brown. New York, Maine's first district, as well as the at-large vote. I don't see McConnell making any inroads with libertarians or rural voters that would give me any reason to think that he would win or even make this a reduced margin with regard to the at-large vote in Maine. I also think that Brown, honestly, I think Brown wins Minnesota by a safe margin. I mean, the suburbs of Minneapolis are shifting the state to the left, and they have been in recent years, and I just think that, Minnesota, the Democrats at a more local level, like in the House or in the state Senate, have not been atrocious at the rural area in rural areas like we saw Colin Peterson in 2018, which was a blue wave year, and he did lose in 2020. But Peterson won a Trump plus 30 district. We've seen, Amy Klobuchar, she won all 8 of Minnesota's congressional districts in her 2018 Senate bid. So, Minnesota, the rural areas have, they have a history of voting for conservative or ancestral Democrats. And Brown, he has appealed to ancestral Democrats as well as conservatives, but more so ancestral Democrats. So I think he wins Minnesota by 13-14%. McConnell, he probably wins Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota by safe margin. He wins all of Nebraska by he wins 3 of Nebraska's 5 electoral votes safe. He wins Oklahoma safe. Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia safe. So only 69 electoral votes for Mitch McConnell safe. And now the likely states for Sherrod Brown, I think that Brown wins Nevada and Arizona by likely margins. I think Nevada, he makes inroads in the rural areas and doesn't really fall in Washoe or Clark. I mean, he might even improve on Biden in some of those areas, especially with Hispanics, which means, Biden wins the state by 2.5. I think Brown wins it by 5 to 6, maybe even more. In Arizona, I think Arizona he wins by just barely a likely margin. Maybe it could always fall into the lean category, but I think that McConnell just does not get the Trump base out that came out for Trump in the rural areas of the state, and that just elevates Brown's margin. Plus, he makes inroads with Hispanics. Now, Brown being from the Rust Belt certainly helps him there, and I think that the Rust Belt would be a key part of his coalition for victory, and I think that he wins the Rust Belt, these states, all by a likely margin. McConnell really has no appeal to working class voters at all. I think that he would do very poorly with working class voters if he somehow got the GOP nomination in 2024, which, again, the scenario is, I can guarantee this is not going to be what happens. And also, people say that maybe McConnell could make inroads with suburbanites, compared to Trump. So I actually did a swing map of the 2020 Kentucky Senate race to the 2020 presidential race. McConnell ran behind Trump in every Kentucky county except for one suburban county that, I think he actually, I think it might have been, I'm not sure, it could have been Fayette County, I'm not sure. I could be wrong, do not quote me on that, but but McConnell ran ahead of Trump in one county by 1%. It was a suburban county. That's mostly because he's just from that state. Talking with the suburbs, suburban voters still dislike McConnell. I think that they'd go for Brown over him, especially because of McConnell's ultra-conservative positions on social issues like transgender kids playing in sports and gay marriage. So I think that would really down him in those areas. And with the working class, his kind of corporatist economic policies, Brown would just use the term, and he'd really he'd get killed with union voters, especially in say like Michigan or Wisconsin, where you have a lot of these voters who turn out for only populist candidates. Like we saw, candidate quality really matters in the Rust Belt. Like in 2018, we saw huge Democratic victories at the statewide level. Minnesota, the Democrats won the Senate race by 24. In Wisconsin, they won it by 11. They won it by 6 in Michigan. They won it by 15 in Pennsylvania. They won it by 6 in Ohio. And that's because they ran populist candidates. Now, if we compare that to the establishment candidates that they ran 2 years prior in Wisconsin, they ran, I don't even remember. I think it was, or no, it was, I know it was he was a former senator. It was uh Russ Feingold. I knew his name started with Russ, but I almost said Russ Fulker. No, it's Russ Feingold. Feingold was challenging incumbent, didn't really run a good campaign. In Pennsylvania, they ran Katie McGinty, who was just a bad candidate. She just tried to run as an establishment Democrat with Hillary Clinton, and it did not work out well for her in the state. So, candidate quality really matters in this area, and McConnell is a terrible candidate for this area. Um, New Hampshire goes for around by a likely margin as well. He wins it by 10 or 11. Montana and Utah. I mean, Utah could actually be safe. I mean, I'll just say Utah's safe. It's very close to being likely though. But I'll just have Utah safe because they really like establishment Republicans there for whatever reason. Montana, I just think that McConnell doesn't get the rural base that Trump had, and then with that being said, Brown can make inroads with Hispanics and urban voters in areas like drive up turnout in I don't know, I can't talk, drive up turnout in Missoula, Butte, Bozeman. So I think that that makes the state narrow up a little bit, kind of like a 10-point Bullock-esque loss. Alaska, I think I think it's close to being lean. I think it's a 5 or 6 point McConnell victory. Actually, you know what? I'm actually thinking that even though Brown can make inroads with Native Americans, because Biden actually did pretty poorly with Native Americans, like the northern part of the state, like North Slope County. But I think that I think that McConnell could maybe do a little better than Trump with more libertarian voters who work in the oil industry. So it's close. I think that McConnell loses by 9 or wins the state by 9 or 10. He also wins the first district in Nebraska by just 12%. I think this was like a 17 or 18 point Trump district. It's kind of trending to the left because it's more suburban. So I think that the overall leftward trend would shift it towards the Democratic Party, and McConnell being a poor candidate would make this be a likely district. Kansas is likely as well. The suburbs would swing the states to the left, as we know. Mississippi and South Carolina. These are actually not South Carolina. We're not going to touch South Carolina just yet. Actually, you know what? Maybe we'll. South Carolina is close. I think it's the closest of these likely states that I have. South Carolina is Brown gets good black turnout, and McConnell loses a lot of support in the rurals, but still, these states are both red enough for McConnell to still create them by likely margins. I think he wins Mississippi by 10, and he wins South Carolina by 5. So yeah, he also wins Missouri by a likely margin, as with Indiana. Now, going over to our... Oh, wait, and also I forgot to mention that the first district of Nebraska would be safe for Sherrod Brown. Now, it could be gerrymandered, like we could see a Nebraska gerrymander, but I still overall think that Brown could win. If it's gerrymander, maybe he wins it by a linear likely margin, but I'll just have it as safe because I'm not going to really go into logistics right now where we have such a really such an interesting scenario playing out here, and especially with redistricting could affect the allocation of electoral votes. Now, for our lean states, I think Brown wins Ohio by a lean margin. And I was close to putting in likely. I almost did put it in likely, but I think he wins Ohio by 4 or 5. McConnell maybe does a little better in the Columbus suburbs compared to Trump, but everywhere else he falls. He falls in the rural. He falls especially working class voters. So that costs him Ohio. He also loses Iowa because he just doesn't get, because the Iowa rural voters are actually they're more ancestrally Democratic, but they came out for Trump because of social issues mostly. And I think McConnell is conservative on social issues, but he's not populist enough to convince these voters to give them a good reason to vote for him again. And especially we could see a party fatigue issue here where we've had Iowa and Ohio being pretty red states by but 2024, it'll have been 12 years since they went blue at the presidential level. We could see them swing back, especially Ohio being Sherrod Brown's home state. So that helps him there. He also probably wins Georgia and North Carolina by lead margins. Again, these states would be closer, especially North Carolina, but I think the suburbs are just too far gone for the GOP, especially with a socially conservative candidate like Mitch McConnell. Georgia, I just think, again, the Atlanta suburbs maybe wouldn't swing too hard against McConnell. They'd be one of his better regions relative to Trump, but he loses a lot of support in the rurals, kind of like, we saw in the runoffs, and the urban areas just come out hard for Sherrod Brown. So I think also me in second district is lean for Sherrod Brown. I don't see McConnell, like after Obama carried it and after Jared Golden won it, I think that this district is closer than people think it is. I just think that Trump being a populist and having insane rural support really helped him here. I think that Brown flips it back by 2 or 3%. So now these two states are pretty close. I think that Texas goes for Brown. Texas votes itself to Florida in this election. I'll explain why. I think that Texas is a state that really the Democrats I think that they're further off from victory than most people think. I think that they still have a lot of stuff go right for them, but in this scenario it would, because we'd see McConnell falling in the rurals, losing support with Hispanics, especially because the incumbent factor, we have the incumbent party always improving with Hispanics. That's a proven trend and happens all the time. And then the suburbs of Dallas and Houston just swinging hard. In San Antonio and Austin as well. Just the suburbs all across Texas swinging hard against the GOP. Mostly because of social issues, because you have a lot of socially liberal suburban voters turning against the Republican Party. So I think that Texas narrowly goes for Sherrod Brown. Florida's really close. I was tempted to put it in the McConnell column, but I'm just going to put it in the Brown column because of it being a state that Obama won it twice. Even in 2008, where you had an incumbent party, the Republicans did pretty poorly there. Now they were historically unpopular at the time, but McConnell is another historically unpopular candidate, I think, who really embodies the establishment. That people really don't trust the establishment right now, and I think that even if Hispanics might like more socially conservative Republicans, especially in Southern Florida where you have a lot of Cuban voters, I don't think it's enough to really give them a reason to vote for McConnell, who's so unpopular, over a really top-tier candidate like Sherrod Brown. So I think Brown, and again, he also improves in the suburbs. He gets the turnout he needs from Orlando and Jacksonville and the Tampa Bay / St. Petersburg area. So I think for that reason, Florida goes narrowly for Sherrod Brown, but it's under 1%. I think he wins Texas by a little over 1%, but that's it. So there are no states left. I think this is the final map for if this scenario played out. Again, this is kind of, I don't know why DC is likely. That's annoying. Again, this scenario is not going to happen, so do not, I know that if this channel still exists in 3 years, someone's going to come back and be like, if, like Ron DeSantis wins the presidency, they'll be like, this aged very well, and they'll just look at the map at the end. Please don't do that, although I know that you guys, someone's going to do that. But that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.